Hi guys, welcome to my channel once again. This is Bar Talk with Ola and my name is Mojola Olua. If you're just tuning on to my channel, please subscribe, like my videos, leave me comments in the comment section, let me have feedback from you. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming again. Today I wanted to talk about something related to intellectual property, especially since the 26th of April 2021 was the World Intellectual Property Day. So I wanted to talk about something related to IP, and that's why today I will be talking about plagiarism. Yes, plagiarism. I know that this is something that a lot of people have misconstrued, so I'll be shedding some light on it and probably differentiating between plagiarism and copyright infringement. So what's plagiarism? Let's get right into it. Plagiarism is basically stealing of someone else's ideas, arts, lyrics, words, writings in part or in whole, and then passing it off as yours. That's plagiarism. In layman terms, we could just narrow it down to putting out someone else's work as yours. That's basically plagiarism, and it boils down to stealing, so it is wrong. It could be putting out someone else's work as yours. It could be copying large parts of their work without proper citation, and it could be taking pieces of other people's works and then piecing them together as your own work, without any citation or reference to the original owners of the work. That's plagiarism. In the past, we've had a president and we've had, a first lady plagiarizing other people's work in their speeches, and we would blame them and would blame their speech writers, but essentially they took other people's words and put it in their speech without citing those people, and that's when the trouble came. If once you cite the appropriate author or owner of the work, you're safe, but without citing, you have taken the honor, you've taken the authority over the work, you've taken the ownership for yourself, and it's wrong because it's someone else's work. So that's plagiarism. I wrote an article about how to avoid plagiarism. I'll put the link in the description box. I'd like you to read it. There are different ways by which you could avoid plagiarism, especially if you're a writer. So please check it out and read it up and learn a thing or two for yourself to avoid plagiarism. Plagiarism is usually very serious in academic circles. People could lose their professorship, their authorship of work, lose their rank or status just because of plagiarism. So it's very important for you to avoid plagiarism. Cite people properly or use a plagiarism checker. And then we have people who copy others with reckless abandon and would not even care whose ox is God. It's very wrong. And I've also heard people say, oh, I'll sue you. Thing is, it's not that easy to sue for plagiarism. It's still very much largely in the realm of a moral wrong, an ethical wrong, rather than a crime. So in most jurisdictions, plagiarism is still not a crime. It's rather a moral wrong. So it's something that would appeal to your conscience not to do. So do not plagiarize. It's wrong. People might not be able to sue you for plagiarism now, but it does not speak well of you. And one day, you'll be caught and it will look very, very bad on you. Plagiarism essentially tells us that you're not original, tells us that you're not credible, and tells us that we cannot trust you. So please avoid plagiarism by all means. There are two key things that plagiarism represents and that plagiarism presents. One is fraud, misrepresentation. You have taken someone else's work and you have put it out as your own. That's fraudulent. You want other people to believe that you are the owner of the work, that it originated from you, whereas it did not originate from you. So fraud, misrepresentation, that's one. And then the second thing is stealing. That's deprivation. You're stealing someone else's work, so you're depriving them of the rightful ownership. You're depriving them of the rightful authority over their work, and then you might even put their own originality in dispute, that people will now have to compare and contrast and say, okay, who wrote this first, or who is the owner of this work? But essentially, you're depriving them of the lien, the authority that they have over their own work as the writer, the author, or the originator of the work. So stealing and fraud, those are two key things that plagiarism presents, and that's why you must avoid plagiarism at all costs. Now, not all copyright infringement will amount to plagiarism, But plagiarism and copyright infringement can be similar in some cases, but they are not always the same. For instance, you could plagiarize work that's already in public domain. Under copyright laws, if a work is already in public domain, it can be used by anyone without recourse to the original owner. But when you now lift such, for instance, Shakespeare's work now are in public domain. When you now lift off all verses of Shakespeare's poem, or you lift off all conversations, dialogues in Shakespeare's stories, without referencing Shakespeare, it's still plagiarism. Even though you've escaped copyright infringement, it's still plagiarism. So in most cases, you might not be able to sue for plagiarism where your work has been plagiarized, but you could put out a caveat. That's what I encourage people to do. I know that on Twitter once, someone accused a learned senior of copying his work. I just said, okay, you could comment on that work that he has copied and say that, for other people that, okay, if you'd like to read the original work, or if you'd like to read this work in full, then you put your own link. So when people click your link, they would see that you have the fuller work and you have the original work, which precedes that person's work in time. So I'll usually encourage people, to stay in their lane while fighting that. But not everybody's going to stay in their lane, so please avoid plagiarism. And then in academic circles, it could put you out of your job, out of your rank fast. So please use a plagiarism checker or cite people properly. Don't just lift words, don't just lift things. And I know that sometimes ideas are similar, writings are similar, lyrics are similar, but there's always a way to differentiate. So another thing is that if you are the owner of a work, it's not all the time that you see something similar to your work that you start alleging plagiarism. It might look similar, but of course, the law is that nullum simile est idem. That's a Latin maxim, which means that nothing similar is the same. So even if works are similar, there's always a way to differentiate. And of course, there will always be the work that precedes another in time. So it's always easy to know who's plagiarizing who by that. So even though people might not be able to sue you for plagiarism, they could sue you for breach of contract. For instance, where you fronted someone else's work as yours. There was a case where a man submitted the same grant application for different applications. The same application you had put together for one application, he submitted it for several applications. So in the end, he was sued for breach of contract, because applications are supposed to be genuine and they are supposed to be original when you're submitting it for each grant application. And in a case where you're using original work and distributing it for profit purposes, you could well play into copyright infringement realms outside of the realm of plagiarism. So be very careful. Try as much as possible to be original, and where you have to cite people or use their own work, please give them their dues. Please cite them, reference them properly. Read the article in the link in the description box. It will probably help you, especially if you're a writer or a lawyer or a layman even, to avoid plagiarism. I've put down fail-proof ways by which you could avoid plagiarism. So happy World Intellectual Property Day 2021. It was on the 26th, but I'm making this video much later. So whenever you see it, happy World Intellectual Property Day, and by all means, avoid plagiarism. I will see you in my very next video. Toodles!